Welcome to Was It That Good, a series where we jump into some massive artists' best albums and go back and decide if they were really that good. And today we're here with the 1975, a brief inquiry into online relationships. But the question is, Tim,
was it that good?
Well, the 1975 are one of the most influential British rock bands of the last decade. I absolutely love them, so there will be no bias here. But shall we jump in to the first track, which is the self-titled introduction, which they have on every album? Can you really call it a track?
I don't know. I think to me it kind of felt like a Kanye West intro track. It was very bizarre. I didn't expect this coming out the gates. This wasn't something that I expected from this album. And just to give some clarity, this is not an album that I've heard prior to this. So this was my kind of debut listening to this. So to hear this coming out the gates, I was like, whoa, what were we in for here?
And then we go straight into Give Yourself a Try, which massively steals the Unreal Joy Division sample. You've probably heard me listen to this song a million times. So I'm intrigued to know, listening properly, what did you think of it?
The guitar throughout this track really started grating on me. It feels like a very simple track. There's not a whole lot going on throughout it. I can understand why people would enjoy it, but one thing that I really don't like is when Matty Healy swaps between his singing voice and his talking voice. It just doesn't work for me.
See, I love this track. I do agree that it is quite repetitive by the end of it. Obviously, that same guitar riff just used a bunch of times, but I quite like it for that. I like the messaging that's been told throughout the song, and it kind of says it in the title, give yourself a try, believe in yourself, etc. I think that this is a good introduction to the album.
I mean, I can't disagree with that, but we move off that onto Two Time, which is a weird-ass title. And also, why do artists just decide to throw in a random all caps titles on albums? It should either be all caps or no all caps. Just pick one and choose.
This is your problems coming out in the flesh right here. I like this. I think it's a catchy little number. It's very auto-tune heavy. That's obviously the point of it. I just think it's a little headbanger. To be honest, having heard this and seen it a million times, it gets a little bit repetitive. It's not my favourite track on the album. I don't think it's the best piece of the 1975 work on offer here. But if you're new to it and you want a little headbanger indie song, it works.
One thing that I really don't like is when an artist does the whole counting in a sentence, because he does the one time, maybe it was two times, could have been three. Who knows how many times it was, but something like that really doesn't work for me. And the rhyme scheme on this song is super basic, and I don't want to sound like a hater, but this really isn't for me. So far, we're not off to a great start.
See, I think one thing I will give this song, listening to it in this context, it made me take note of the layers that were kind of building up in the background. Lots of background vocals coming in, lots of different sounds, etc., which you get in a lot of 1975 tracks, but I'd never really noticed that about this before, so it gave me a little bit of a new lease of life with the song. But then we go on to How to Draw / Petrichor.
This is, a pretty cool track. It's very vibey. I like it when the 1975 let whoever it is who's the ambient noise guy in the band, who clearly did a lot of stuff on Notes on Unconditional Form, when they let him shine, I think that's when they're at their best. And this track is a perfect example of that.
This definitely feels like something straight off of Notes on a Conditional Form, and that electronic focused artist will likely be George Daniel, the drummer, who, it's Charlie XCX's fiance. He's worked on a lot of tracks with her, worked on a lot of his own electronic sounding tracks in recent years. I think this is a cool little song.
Yeah, I think it would have been better if they didn't include Matty on it with the weird, octave down filter on his voice. But it is criminal to me that this is one of the least listened to tracks off the entire album. It's just so unfair, because this is phenomenal work.
I think it's really interesting doing this with you because you're not a fan of their kind of style of indie a lot of the time, or just their sound as a whole. So you always pick out the exact tracks that most people dislike.
Yeah, the ones that the fans of the 1975 would go, well, that's not quite what they usually like. But for people that maybe don't like the 1975 that much, these are the kind of tracks that really shine out. But we move off that onto Love It If We Made It.
See, I think that this is hard-hitting, covers a serious topic very well, has massive moments, feels grand. Honestly, this is one of my favourite tracks on the album, if not my favourite.
Does Bro know that there's other notes that he can sing within the first minute, and then after about 1 minute 30 he goes back to it again? It sounds like he really thinks he do be spitting them bars, but he really isn't. Like it's just the same note all the way through, and it doesn't do it for me.
I mean, that happens in a lot of I think you've been a level 1 hater right now.
I'm not
this. I'm not hearing it. This is an absolute banger. The kind of big bass drops, especially if you see this song live, incredible. It's a great song, and again, it's a serious topic covered well by the band.
I will give them that. Throughout this album, there's a really good like level of introspective into what they're talking about. And considering this album was released in 2018, it kind of feels fresh. You've got to kind of take your mind back. This was 6 years ago. This wasn't, if it came out recent, you'd be like, yeah, everybody said that, everybody's done that. But because it came out when it did, it kind of works nicely. But one thing that you might agree with, do you not think it lasts a little bit too long? It could have done with like maybe a minute shaving off the end of it. I feel like they could have condensed it down and made it a bit more of a powerful track that way.
I wish it had lasted forever, but we'll move on to Be My Mistake.
So you know what? Okay, as much of a hater as Matty Healy as I am, his voice sounds fucking great on this track.
Oh my God. I nearly just flew backwards off my seat. I really like the fact that after Love It If We Made It and the electronic Petrichor song that kind of brought the tempo up, this brought it back down very well. As you say, good vocals from Matty. And I actually do think that it covers the topic of, cheating or getting with someone you shouldn't really well.
Yeah, another thing, just moving back to Matty, is that it makes me question why he can't do this kind of singing more often. And it also makes me realise that the inflections that he has on his voice when he's singing more powerfully is probably like a choice thing. Like he's actively doing that as that's his style. And I just don't like that. But he can sing. I mean, he can sing well anyway. Of course he can. He's in one of the biggest UK bands. I'm not going to say that Matty Healy can't sing. But this track really shows off what he can do. And along with the acoustic guitar and the ambient noises in the background, it's a really nice track. It is a really nice track.
I feel like I'm watching the introspective battles of a man with you trying to compliment this song without saying, oh yeah, but sometimes his singing's bad. But on this one, it's actually quite good. We'll move on to Sincerity Is Scary.
Ooh, a little gospel-esque track on this one. I think the instrumental is really funky. The piano works nicely, and the bass is really low in the mix in the background. But if you have a nice little sub going on, it works so nice. It carries it all through very nicely.
I completely agree about the instrumental. I said it on a previous track, but I think the layers in this are really good, as in there's a lot going on. If you listen to it a few times, you can pick up on different moments. And I really think the added choir background vocals in the chorus make this a super catchy and listenable song.
Yeah, they complement the track amazingly well, but we move off that onto I Like America and America Likes Me. And let me just start this by saying, what is going on with Matty's voice on this track? You must agree that the effects on his voice are bogus.
Nah, it's the whole point of the song.
What do you mean?
It's a decision.
It's a decision, so he put effects on his voice. What's that got to do with the song? How is that to do with the point of the song?
The whole point of the song is there's more focus on the instrumental, and the words that are spoken are meant to be noticed and delivered in a strange way because it's around school shootings and different topics like that.
It just makes the track unlistenable for me. It genuinely.
I thought you'd really like this one.
No, because it's like he's going for some kind of weird SoundCloud rapper-esque style, which I kind of get with the America thing. No, I get that, but don't. How about don't?
Nah, I like this. I think that style that he was going for was executed quite well. Really heavy instrumental, a nice few drops in there. It goes hard. And again, I think that he's going for that SoundCloud style. Like there's bits are in there like kids don't want rifles, they want Supreme. Like it's about being in America and school shootings, etc. So you need to take that into account.
I think another thing that I took into account with previous songs, but not this one, is the year that it was released. So if I take into the fact that it was 2018, which is just around the start of the SoundCloud rapper hype, they did jump on that quite early, and 1975 are really good at getting ahead of trends. So I'll give them a little bit of credit for that, but not a great track.
You need to grow up. Let's move on to The Man Who Married a Robot / Love Theme.
When the voice kicked in on this, I thought I'd activated text-to-speech on my computer. I thought it was reading something out. I'm not going to lie though, entertaining little story. Yeah. I did enjoy it. I feel like it's very Matty Healy humour coded.
This is, when it comes on, I always think I want to hate on it, but by the end of it, I'm like, it actually covers the topic of internet addiction and, you know, people being lonely and just using the internet as a way out pretty well in a very, I kind of feel like this makes the album more of an album in a weird way.
Yeah, it kind of like adds an extra layer to it. It adds an extra bit of the story, I guess you could call it, of the album. I don't know if there really is a story, but you know what I'm saying. And towards the end of this track, there's a great bit of like orchestral scoring going on. It works really well, and I think that's something that 1975 does really well, is the orchestral like juts that come in, and that's just credence to the rest of the band because they are phenomenal like musicians.
Let's move on to Inside Your Mind. What did you think of that one, Tim?
Pretty boring, isn't it?
You know what? I actually agree. I think that this is another Karma moment, but it's not as good as previous or future Karma moments. Just a song that exists.
It's another super repetitive track for me, which we've had a couple of so far. The guitar goes on. Everything just drags on. Yeah.
But then we jump up to a higher tempo, more 1975 sounding tracking. It's not living if it's not with you.
It is a classic 1975 track, and there's not a whole lot going on, but there's enough to keep your attention.
This is what any fans of the band or even anyone that's heard them before will come to expect at this point when you put on a track like this. And it's catchy. It's vibey, it's fun. If you stood in a crowd, if you stood in a bar or something somewhere, you can have a little dance to it. It's fine.
It's not my cup of tea, unfortunately, because anything that is classic 1975 just immediately grates me the wrong way. But I will say that the addition of the female vocals to Matty's voice in the choruses works really nicely. I do enjoy that.
Shall we go on to Surrounded by Heads and Bodies?
Another song with fantastic ambience. Give that man a fucking raise. I swear down, he's fantastic at what he does.
This kind of brings the tempo down yet again. I really liked the number of different kind of sound effects and things going on in the background. It really kept me interested throughout this track because there were moments I was like, do I really like this? But then there was enough throughout it to keep me on with it.
Yeah, there's the odd kind of ghosty, glitchy vocals, like just Matty repeating a word, but like maybe a sentence later and it just goes in a different like direction. And I think that works nicely. And there's a really light snare drum in the background that comes in. And when that comes in, it really makes you go, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? It adds a little bit extra to it to kind of bring your attention back to the track. But for me, not the worst in the world, but not the greatest.
Yeah, it feels like an album track, but
Yes.
it's a good
Yeah.
album track, if
It's
you will.
alright, yeah.
And then we're on to Mine, which for me is a bad album track.
Yeah, interesting intro with the pipes. It's a very strong choice considering they feature nowhere else on the album. Very rogue to throw those in. But bro really do be fighting crime online sometimes. He'd really do be, you know?
I didn't really vibe with this song at all. I can't, like, it's not... I've listened to it before. I listened to it again here, gave it another chance. It's just probably my least favourite on the record.
There is a sick-ass trumpet solo in it, though. Let's just admit that, because their trumpeter is amazing. The saxophonist...
Is it a trumpeter or a trumpeter?
Trumpeter.
Surely it's trumpeter.
I think it's trumpeter. But the trumpeter sounds like a planet.
Yeah.
and then the saxophonist is also amazing as well, which is another word that doesn't sound like it should be the word. And there's a cool swing vibe to the track as a whole. And I know you're saying you don't really like it, which is going to make me say, you know, I actually didn't dislike this track. The one thing I really don't like, though, is the really breathy vocals. Like, fuck that off, and it'd probably be a bit more bearable. But we move off that into I Couldn't Be More in Love.
And I couldn't be more in love with the viewer than if they hit like and subscribe right now. So if you're enjoying the review, before we get on to the final two tracks and our album thoughts, hit those buttons. But on the track, I really liked this. I thought it was emotional. It was put together well. Matty's vocals were really nice again. And I wanted to kind of point out one little line from it because it's just always echoes in my head. And it's, but what about these feelings that I've got? And if you've never felt that after a breakup, where you've had a breakup, someone else doesn't care, but you've kind of still got these everlasting feelings, then I'm happy for you. But I thought that line in itself was quite nice.
Yeah, something about this track feels like a song I've heard before. Not in a detrimental way, just in a way that it's clearly very inspired by something. I don't quite know what it is. It feels a little bit like a vintage 80s type track, I want to say, in that era of music. And I think it works quite nicely for a 1975 track. I don't have much to say in the negative side of things for this.
Well, there's been a few more high moments from you, Tim, but what do you think of the last track on the album, I Always Want to Die Sometimes?
This is going to be horrible for me to say because it's such a big track, but the initial part of it genuinely gave me Jimmy Eat World vibes.
Oh, wow.
Something about it really set me on like a Clarity type, you know, the more downbeat and calmer songs that Jimmy Eat World have. It felt like it was going in that route. And then when it kicked in, all I could think of, I don't know if you'll agree, is Oasis. Throughout the entire track, I could just hear Oasis.
See, I didn't think of any other band, to be honest.
Right.
I just kind of listened to it as it was. I do know what you mean about the Jimmy Eat World, not so much about Oasis, but I really liked how this, as you say, had that calmer start and then throughout built up to really grand moments and then built back down and then ended in a calm sense. I thought it really tied the album off well, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a great outro track, but the chorus really sounds like a melody that Oasis would use. And then as I kind of went through it after that and I went, oh, that kind of sounds a bit like Oasis, I started to notice more and more features that sounded like one of their tracks. And there's the strings, the guitars, the drums, and even the lyrics to an extent are things where something about concrete shoes or something like that. And I was like, I could definitely hear Liam mumbling those lines at some point. And, you know, honestly, it's not the worst track that I've ever heard. It's not my cup of tea again because it's a very 1975 track, but I think out of all the songs that sound like the 1975, this would probably be the one that I would most likely to play.
Right, yeah, I get you. I really like this. I thought this was another example of Matty showing his vocal ability quite well to kind of close things off. There's some really good notes in here, but the last song. So what do you think about the album as a whole, Tim? I'm really excited to hear this.
This is a very cohesive project. It makes sense. Everything is thematically the same. You know, everything follows each other. The lyrics are really strong and potent. There's a lot of good topics, and the way that they've approached the topics is done phenomenally well. And I'm not a huge fan of the 1975, as I'm sure is very clear by now. I won't mention it anymore. I probably will. But I can appreciate this album for what it is and for what they were doing for the time that it was released.
I think the time that it was released is very important. Going back and re-listening to this in 2024 made me realise just how ahead of its time it was. A lot of the topics that were covered very well, and in a way where it didn't just feel like someone talking about it, it actually felt more like a piece of art around a very serious thing that's going on in the world. The sad part of which is a lot of the serious things, obviously they spoke about immigration, school shootings, racism, lots of things like that are all still massive, huge problems in the world to this day. So it feels relevant still.
They managed to bring through a lot of things in a way that would make it so that when you listen to it again in the future, it still holds true. But the one thing that I really wish they would do is just give the band a little bit more time to shine. And I know there's a lot of orchestral pieces in it, and there's a lot of time for that to happen. But I just feel like it needs a little bit more on that front.
I think that's what really happened with the next album, which was Notes on a Conditional Form. Then the whole band kind of got tracks to themselves and did whatever. But one thing I will say about this as well, it has a lot of stereotypical 1975 tracks, but I think they're all quite good in a sense of they're very catchy, very big bop songs that everyone, when you're in an arena, can sing along to and have a dance to. At the same time as the serious tracks, for me, that makes the overall track list very appealing because it's kind of a bit of everything that I want. I feel like all my different appetites have been fed.
Yeah, and whilst doing that, they managed to kind of stick within the same genre. It doesn't kind of like expand itself out too much, but it doesn't not do enough that it sounds like the same track every time. Every track has a unique style to it, and you can definitely differentiate between the tracks. There's no point in the album that it swaps into the next track and you go, oh, I didn't realise another song had started. They were all very their own pieces, but they merge very nicely into one cohesive album. But the question that is on everybody's mind now, Joe, is, was it that good?
I would say yes, it is that good. I think as a piece of work, it is the 1975's best in my opinion. I maybe personally slightly prefer Notes on a Conditional Form, but that's got a special place in my heart. And I think I can appreciate as a cohesive album, this is much shorter and flows in a better fashion. I would say it was that good. But Tim, what would you say?
For me, as a non-1975 fan, as somebody who is very new to listening to their albums in full, I have to say Notes on a Conditional Form is easily my favorite 1975 album. This album for me really didn't do it for me. Like it didn't hit the levels I wanted it to. But would I say it was bad? No, I wouldn't. Would I say it's amazing? No. Is it good? It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. I don't think I can physically say that this is a good album. I just don't think I can allow myself to do it.
So you're kind of saying it's good, but it wasn't that good. Like that
Yeah,
good.
it wasn't that good, but it was all right. It was all right.
On that note, what would you rate it out of 10?
So I'm bumping my notes rating up because I have to give this a rating that is fair, and a fair rating for this would be 5.5. And I think that's okay, and I think that's more than fair because I liked less than half of the songs of this album. The thing that bumps it up is how cohesive it is. I know I've mentioned that a lot, but how well they put across the topics that they want to talk about, that really bumps the score up.
There is no chance on this planet that this album is only a 5.5.
I mean, there is, because I've just said it.
No, that is absolutely horrible.
No, because Notes is now going up to a 6 because that was only a 5.
Notes is also more than a 6. I've given A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships an 8.5 out of 10.
That's just...
I know, I genuinely think
You ever heard of the term glazing?
this is one of the best indie rock or experimental pop rock albums of the last decade, without a doubt. The fact that you've given it a 5.5 actually seriously offends me. I think even as someone that doesn't particularly like the band, you should be able to appreciate that this is not a 5.5.
Come on.
Seriously?
Come on now. It is not the 1975's best work.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video and you enjoy rock music, indie rock, rap music, music as a whole, please remember to hit like and subscribe. We'll be back with more Was It That Goods? And we also did a Was It That Bad for Notes and A Conditional Form. Same format, but deciding if it was actually that bad. So that'll be linked at the end of the video. Check that out. Peace.
Thank you very much.